Would you please welcome Alexandra Leeper from, Dr. Alexandra Leeper from the Iceland Ocean Cluster and Life Science. Thank you.
Lovely. Good morning. It's really a pleasure to join you in Belfast. This is my first time here, and it's also really interesting to learn from all these other cluster initiatives. I'm the CEO of the Iceland Ocean Cluster. We're a blue innovation cluster based in Reykjavik, Iceland, but doing projects and activities all around the world. And I actually wanted to start by just briefly introducing myself, because clusters are really driven by the people behind them and the passion, and we have an amazing team based in Iceland. And I myself am not a cluster practitioner or expert in this by training. I have actually, across my career, worked all around the blue economy, starting underwater as a diver and then moving into marine biology, and then working offshore in oil and gas as a navigator, then moving into the aquaculture industry and aquaculture research and realizing circular economy really made a lot of sense. And then looking at that now in my current role from fisheries and from innovation and from business perspective. And across all these different sectors and around the world as well with these different jobs, I saw so much commonality in these different perspectives and so very little dialogue. So it's this really that reminds me every day how important it is what we do at clusters in connecting people and having that dialogue. So I wanted to take my time today to talk about the Iceland Ocean Cluster, who we are and what we do, and then really dive into our flagship program or movement really, which is called 100% Fish, which is this idea of not wasting any of the precious seafood that we catch and farm, but instead finding value-creating ways to use everything and waste nothing. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're then taking what is an Icelandic cluster and an Icelandic movement onto the global stage, and what does that look like. So the Iceland Ocean Cluster, it was founded in 2011 by Dr. Thor Sigurðsson, and it was really created to solve one of the biggest challenges in the Icelandic fisheries sector. And the fisheries is really the base of the economy in Iceland. And what was happening was that there were all these really large fisheries companies, many of them fishing the same waters, facing many of the same challenges, selling to the same clients. But they were very isolated from one another. There was no dialogue happening between them. There was this real sense of competitiveness around a scarce resource. And at the same time, these fisheries companies were not getting the opportunity or having the chance to meet entrepreneurs and innovators that had great ideas and had great solutions to their problem, but who they themselves, these entrepreneurs, they were at home in their garages or in their spare bedrooms, working away on their idea and actually not bringing that and connecting this kind of product market fit. And also the research community that had all these great sources of data and kind of robust science were not also in the conversation. So the house and the cluster was founded to be a physical space and a community to invite all these different groups in and really open the dialogue and grow innovation in the fishery sector, but also grow the wider blue economy. And when the house was first founded, so we're based in a 3,000 square meter house that used to be a fish processing house, about 10 companies came in 2011. And now in 2024, we have about 70 companies. So 70 companies physically in-house with us, from brand new startup with a cool idea and no money, to big international companies like Marel, which is the biggest in the world for fish and poultry processing equipment. And we work all across the blue economy, but our core aim is really about creating sustainable blue value. And because I think it's poignant to what we're talking about today and what we do in Iceland is a little bit different, I wanted to talk about how we fund what we do, because we have and always have been a private for-profit business as a cluster, which is a little bit different. So this works in two different ways, kind of two main branches of funding and revenue. And I think of it as the physical branch, the hús, it's the Icelandic word for house, so our physical ocean cluster house, and the cluster itself, which is this kind of virtual activity center and hive. So the house, it is where we have our tenants and where we rent out space, but the whole space itself is designed around community and activity. So we have a lot of meeting rooms and venue spaces that we also rent out both to our partners and collaborators, but actually to the general public. We've even had several weddings in-house. But we also do a lot of targeted tourism. So with the idea of inviting interested groups into the house and being this center that they can come to and connect with what's going on in the seafood sector in Iceland. And with the cluster, we do a whole range of things, and there's lots of sub-branches under this. But essentially, we do research and innovation projects at the national, Nordic, European, and international level. We do business, innovation, and science consultancy. And we do a lot of innovation and investment services. For example, this can look like boot camps or investor matchmaking days. And also, we have some large members that both sponsor us year-round, but also then sponsor particular packages of activities under these topics. And for a long time, we've been angel investing in companies that we really believe in and we think can make a change. And we're now building that out into a more comprehensive venture fund. So all these great companies that we see coming through our doors and coming to bring their ideas to us, we can actually do more to support them. But at the heart of really what we do is bringing people together and creating community and connection, bringing the industry together with the entrepreneurs and the research community to really find out where their common ground is, where their potential win-win situations are, and really to solve some of our biggest blue challenges. And we do this in a couple of different ways. I just wanted to show the core ones of doing that. I can't see a timer, so I will do it very quickly so I don't overtake my time. But the idea of the house was always to be this open concept, to be a 365-day-a-year seafood expo where people can come in and know that they're at the center of what's going on in the blue economy, and this is the place to meet people. And one thing that is it sounds like a small thing, but it's something that is fundamentally a part of our philosophy, is that every company in-house, every office, they are not allowed to have their own coffee machine in their office. They must come to these little central kitchen areas, really very cozy community sofa areas, and have their coffee there. And while this sounds like a small thing, because we have an open door policy, because we have so many companies in there, every day you'll be meeting interesting people and you'll be connecting and exploring how you might work together. And we do then lots of activities and events to keep ourselves at the center of what's going on. And so we know what's the most exciting things happening in both the Icelandic and the international blue economy. So just two examples, we had a Smart Oceans lunch where we had experts from the US and Iceland in ocean robotics and ocean remote sensing and companies that invest in it as a big public open panel discussion last month. And also a big, on the bottom here, this is female founders in Iceland, and this is an event called A Taste of Land and Sea, where we do a lot of eating and drinking together, if I'm entirely honest. But this is where they brought their blue and green foods, drinks, and nutraceuticals as a platform really to showcase what they're doing. And we were joined by the former First Lady and President as well, who have been super supportive of this. And alongside that, we run a lot of co-creating workshops, which is about bringing very different sectors with potentially transferable tech or very different perspectives to the same table to understand where their shared challenges and opportunities are, and then really building that into what is needed and what is the next research or innovation idea that's needed, and then sliding that into things like our boot camps to help entrepreneurs or individuals that want to build that into a company or a spin-off, and then investor matchmaking days where we bring the investors that we know are looking for this stage and this topic of company to the table so that they can actually meet and hopefully those ideas can get off the ground and they can be funded and they can scale. But by far what we're probably most well known for is our flagship program called 100% Fish. And this has been really important in having this very clear message and purpose as well, so people know what do we do. And like I said, 100% Fish is this idea of not wasting any part of that fish that's taken time, energy, and finance to catch and to farm, but instead finding smart and appropriate ways that mean we don't waste it and we create value. And this really has taken a lot of collaboration between industry that have the scale and the resource, entrepreneurs with a good idea, and researchers with the scientific background. And in Iceland, and for our model species, which is Atlantic cod, it's still our most important export, this means we've gone from using just 45% of every fish, so just the fillet, to using more than 90% of every single fish that we landed. And this certainly hasn't been an overnight success. It's been a journey that's taken a lot of entrepreneurism and a lot of innovation and innovative thinking. So I kind of wanted to share that journey with you and at least some of the core concepts, although very briefly, so I don't overgo my time. But to say really, we talked at the beginning about how crisis fuels innovation. And in Iceland, when the quota system came in for the Atlantic cod fishery, this meant suddenly they were going from a fishery where they were catching 450,000 tons of Atlantic cod to around 260, 250,000 tons of cod. So this meant really rapidly that companies in an industry that had been a volume-based fishery had to completely rethink their philosophy and how they ran in order to create value and maintain value, and they had to start redesigning what they were doing. And this started with just looking at the primary product and saying, okay, well, how can we create more value? Can we handle it better? Can we store it better? Can we move it around better and colder? But it very quickly had to start looking at more innovative ways of creating value. But really starting with those easy wins, what we think of as these low-hanging fruits of innovation that doesn't take massive investment, it doesn't take big changes to the existing processing or supply chains, but can be those starting points to create more value and do more with less. So, for example, in Iceland, we take the flesh at the Atlantic cod and we dry it. We eat it as a snack. It's called hartfiskur, and we put butter on it. It's very healthy, good for winter insulation. But the heads of the fish, these were being thrown out. There wasn't a market for that. There wasn't an interest in dried fish heads. But all the technology to dry them existed, and it's done in geothermal facilities. So it was a very small logic jump to say, okay, well, let's dry the fish heads too and see who wants to buy them. And now dried fish heads are shipped from Iceland to Nigeria, where there is a food culture around dried fish heads. And this easy win that started this transformation of thinking gave space for other ideas at different scales. For example, the Atlantic cod liver is very fatty, it's very tasty. It used to be canned, but instead some companies looked at doing cod liver oil, both at small scale in remote fishing villages and even at large scale in Reykjavik, in the city, and just doing this small change in technology that is not high-level tech increased the value about fourfold of those cod livers that were going out. So these ideas that are built then and are these success stories give space for other products as well. And then it gives space also for entrepreneurs and more risky thinking. So, for example, two young entrepreneurs, a company called Codland, came to the Iceland Ocean Cluster, and it was first founded, and they said, okay, well, we see how much of this Atlantic cod skin is still being wasted, and we want to see if we can create value from it. Surely we can make money of this material. And the Iceland Ocean Cluster, we connected them with researchers in Iceland from a company called Matis, and what they realized is that they could extract gelatin and collagen from the Atlantic cod skin. And collagen is a structural protein, so we know when we ingest it, not only does it provide us with dietary protein, but it also gives us more of the building blocks for more collagen, which is healthy for our joints. And then what we helped them do and what was fundamental to this process is that with Codland and with the Iceland Ocean Cluster, we built out a very clear business case. So it wasn't just a fact that it made environmental sense, but also it made economic sense. And then they presented that to some of the biggest fisheries companies in Iceland. And actually, it was the fisheries companies that then invested in this and built out a whole vertically integrated marine collagen factory. So we have this brand new industry in Iceland. And then what was really interesting, and I have to say for me the most exciting thing, is suddenly then this new product, this collagen that had all these different applications, allowed a very traditional blue economy to become a lot more diverse. So, for example, now collagen is used in cosmetics, in nutraceuticals. It's used in a wide range of different products. So people from retail, from marketing, from health and nutrition backgrounds were suddenly much more involved in the blue economy. And likewise, in Iceland, there's a long history of using fish skin leather in clothing, and now that's been reimagined into this modern textile and fashion industry that is suddenly inviting a whole new type of entrepreneur into the blue and fisheries economy. And then these ideas, they give appetite and space for more complicated entrepreneurial ventures that take more time, more research. Oh no, 5 minutes to really get off the ground. And then I will jump to the big success story of Iceland, which is a company that was a startup called Kerecis. And what they were doing, they were at the first founders pitch event of the Iceland Ocean Cluster, pitching their idea to turn Atlantic cod skin into skin grafts for burns and diabetic sores. And some smart fisheries companies invested. And actually last year, Kerecis sold for $1.3 billion US dollars, which is, of course, a huge financial success. It's Iceland's first unicorn. It is the talk of the town. And I think while economically this is really important, it's done something more than that, because it's really transformed the way people think about seafood. It's transformed the way people think about waste, and actually it's transformed the way industry think about working with startups and investing in startups. And it's meant in Iceland that for Atlantic cod, we've gone from a single fish that was worth about $12 US dollars to one that has a potential value of almost 5,000 US dollars. Which is really exciting numbers and over a whole range of different kinds of products. And the thing is, not everywhere is like Iceland, and not every fish is like Atlantic cod. But what we see is that a lot of the steps and the processes and the methods that were used to get people to collaborate, to develop these ideas, to understand what ideas made the most business sense, are extremely transferable. And something that's been really important and really has been a key role in the cluster too is looking at all these different ideas and supporting many of them to happen, but also cohesively to bring them together into a joint storyline of 100% fish. So suddenly, rather than just one single company doing something cool and smart with their cod livers, are part of a movement, which means that they can spread a lot further, and really the impact of what they're doing is much wider, and particularly for an island community like Iceland, but really on the global stage too. So we spend a lot of time looking at these success stories and shouting about them loudly, basically, and widely, and saying, okay, this is what is being done, this is how it was done, this is how you can do it as well. And I think this is really important. And what it's meant now, when we've seen, okay, this is what has worked in Iceland, this is why we did it in Iceland, we see on the global scale that actually we have a shared challenge. And I'm an optimist, so we have shared opportunities to look at this globally. And this is a graphic I've been sharing a lot this year that came out from the World Economic Forum. And this basically shows that along the global fisheries supply chain, we waste and lose almost 24 million metric tons of edible quality seafood, which is an unfathomable number. And then wherever you are in the world, the majority of that waste is happening at this processing on land stage. And that's a lot of where we have been focusing. And we see that this is really something that needs to happen around the world. We have a shared problem, we have a shared opportunity to do something about it. And as we adapt this model for different ecosystems, different landscapes, different fish species, or shellfish for that matter, we're able to learn a lot more about what products are interesting, what nutrition is interesting, what technological capacity do we need, and what can we share. So right now, for example, we've been working in the Great Lakes in the US and Canada on many of their freshwater species from a very different fisheries and innovation context. In the Pacific on tuna, in Namibia on hake, and we've just started a project now in Alaska looking at 100% fish in the Alaskan fisheries, and hopefully next month we'll be looking at cold water prawns in Greenland as well. So we really see this as a global movement, and also being led by these different locations as well, not just us coming in and saying, this is how you should do it. And this is really facilitated then by our network of sister ocean clusters around the world. So these are leaders and groups that have seen what we're doing in Iceland at the Iceland Ocean Cluster and want our support in how to do it there. Each country, and we talked about it earlier, there's, it's not one size fits all. It's what's unique and what makes sense in each place. But the connecting factor with all these sister ocean clusters is that their aim is to create sustainable blue value, but doing it in their own way with their own ecosystem in a way that makes sense for them. So, for example, in 2 weeks, I'll be out in Oregon, in Portland and the surrounding area, where they're just starting their Oregon Ocean Cluster, where they're really focusing on blue food. Actually, seaweed is a massive thing in Oregon, and one of the pillars of what they're doing will be 100% fish, but many of the other lessons will just be transferable and adapted. So hopefully I'm not over time, because I'm good. Okay, so thank you very much, and I really look forward to any questions.